World of Wellesley, which is a nonprofit board in your community, which I know you know very well, and want to just say hello to all of the board members who have been amazing and supportive and volunteering to put this all together. So World of Wellesley board members, former and current, can certainly raise their hands to say hello to everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming, and welcome to everyone. This is maybe our best turnout ever for our 20th anniversary of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday celebration, but also our 30th year of the World of Wellesley. So this is, for 2020, celebrating our 30th anniversary. So we are really proud of Wellesley. Wellesley acknowledges the land that we are on. If you would read with me together, this is a land acknowledgement that recognizes indigenous people in the land that we are on. We are ready. We, as people who reside, work, and engage in Wellesley, acknowledge this town is located on the traditional territory of the Massachusetts people. We also recognize many other Native people and tribes that are in this area, that have been in this area, and remain in this area, and part of our conversation today. I definitely encourage you to research about the Massachusetts tribe. There is information and contact information for them in the community. And it's important to make that acknowledgement and understand and have that lens and that focus in the work that we do in working together for what we're here for today, to honor the dream and the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. So I wanted just to quickly recognize some people that are here today. We are very excited to have some elected officials for our community who work hard for us on our behalf. We have Senator Becker Rausch here today. State Representative Alice Peisch. And we have our town leadership. I think we have every board of select person here today. Is that true? Thank you so much for coming. Did I miss any elected official that is here? Okay. We want to thank Wellesley College for this amazing space and generous co-sponsorship. They have been an amazing partner over the 20 years that we've been able to have the Martin Luther King Breakfast, and I want to thank Marquez up to the podium, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So it's my custom when opening up events like this with an invitation to just take a few seconds before the invitation and invite those present to exchange a sign of peace with one another. So a sign might be a fist bump, it can be a wave, it can be a handshake. Smile. Can you hear me now?
Now.
Okay, great. So it is my custom when opening up an event to just invite folks to take a moment and share a sign of peace with those to your right or to your left. That could be a handshake, a hug, a fist bump. So just take a few seconds, exchange the sign of peace. Smiles, to share some joy, to share some peace with the folks in the room. So, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lived and worked rooted in his deep sense of the call of God on his life. A call in Christian tradition is not something that you choose, it's something that chooses you, often when you're not looking for it. And history is witness to his obedience to that call, even unto death. Dr. King was guided by his deep love of God and God's people. He once said that love has within it a redemptive power, and there is a power there that eventually transforms individuals. It is fitting then that we join together in prayer before the one who is love, as Dr. King so often modeled for us. So let us pray. God of our ancestors, as we gather to remember and celebrate the life and enduring legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we invite and welcome your wondrous presence into this space. This morning you called us and called Dr. King. Your voice beckons from the margins, from humble places. We hear it in the tears of the hungry, in the cries of the frail and frightened, in the pleas of those whose dreams have been too long deferred. God of many names, prepare our hearts for the gift which this moment holds for us. Remove the barriers that keep us from one another, barriers we construct, based on skin color, religion, gender, race, and so many more. Take this day our fears, our worries, and distractions. Turn them into hope and courage, that we may follow the example of Dr. King and so many of our ancestors that have gone before us. Teach us to love as they loved. Teach us to love as you love. Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much. So as part of our community breakfast, we have had the amazing pleasure over the years, which I believe Richard McGee loved the Kuumba singers and always made sure that they were part of our Martin Luther King celebration. So we are so excited to have the Kuumba singers of Harvard present to us. Kuumba is a Swahili word that means to create. And in our community, we take that to mean doing what we can with what we have to leave a space better than we found it. Please welcome the Kuumba singers of Harvard.
Hi, so we're going to be singing 2 songs right now. The first of which is going to be Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Black National Anthem. So we ask that you stand if you are able to. And then the second song is an anti-apartheid song from South Africa.
Thank you so much. Excellent, excellent job. And we'll have an opportunity to hear from them again later in the program. So now we are ready to get excited and a little loud and a little rowdy. That came back from my Wellesley High School cheerleading days. I might have to start jumping. So we are so super excited to have the Wellesley cheer team with us today under Coach Odessa Sanchez, and so welcome, ladies.
Sing girl, sing just like her. I sing it loud. Never touch anybody that's in her. Sing girl, sing just like her. The best thing in the world. I never change for anybody else. Sing.
Bring 'em out, bring 'em out, bring 'em out, bring 'em out. It's hard to yell when the back rails in your mouth. Back now, Rob don't even know how to act now. Little street shit, nigga, boy, sex now. Still ballin'. Raiders, period.
Excellent job. So let's give another round of applause for we all understand technical difficulties, but way to hold it together, especially early in the morning. So great job. Excellent. Definitely didn't do that when I was in high school. Okay. So we are ready for our special panel presentation. And I would like to first thank and welcome my good friend Christina Horner, who is our moderator and host today. This is an amazing woman, fierce Wellesley mom, has beautiful 3 children, and very, very thankful for her to step up and volunteer to put this together. Not a board member of World of Wellesley, but a volunteer, someone who wanted to be a part of the Martin Luther King Breakfast and has been truly instrumental in our panel presentation today. So welcome, Christina Horner.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. And so I am very pleased to introduce our 3 panelists. A brief description of their accomplishments, very brief, is written inside of your program. They're outstanding educators that I have worked with over the years and have gotten to know. And so it's truly an honor to me. And I also think to Wellesley that they took the time to be with us today. They come from Maine, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. So the fact that they're here just to share just some insight from their perspective in terms of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what this day means to them as individuals and also the work that they do. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say. So I'm going to introduce them very briefly and then we'll get started. Also, you will notice on your tables that there are a few index cards. And so those index cards have been provided for you because you may have some questions. I know we only have half an hour, but we did want to make this somewhat interactive. So there are index cards and pens available for you. And we're hoping that you will think about some questions that may come to your mind, put them on the index cards, and Michelle will walk around and collect them and theme them. We can't ask all of them because we only have until, I think I only have until 9:35. I'm using some of the time. So Michelle will collect them, theme them, and then she will ask those questions of the panelists at the end. How does that sound?
Great.
Good? All right, great. So one by one, first of all, I'd like to invite Dr. Tina Obi. She comes from Maine and lived in Wellesley for a few years with her 2 beautiful children. And so also Annual Whedon. Annual is no stranger to Wellesley Public Schools. He has been very instrumental in teaching the entire Wellesley community about Native people and also has deeply, deeply enriched our curriculum. And then also Mo Nunez is an educator who works with Great Schools Partnership, and he works throughout the country specializing in equity and community engagement. Okay, so for the questions, I figured, I'm an educator myself, so I figured that I need to provide some context for some of these questions. So for the very first question, and so in terms of the panelists, we're not going to do this in any particular order. They have free license to agree, disagree, build on one another's comments. Please understand that this is a very diverse group, and they're not here to represent, just speak for the various marginalized communities that they represent, but they're just providing a personal perspective that they're going to share with us today. Okay, so for the first question, the questions are written on the screen. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. battled issues like voting rights, poverty, and access to public facilities. His wife, Coretta Scott King, was outspoken in support of gay and lesbian rights. In 2020, what do you see as our most needed issue to address? Or actually, we can say issues. Who would like to start? And I also told them that they have 2 minutes each, because they're great speakers, but
well, Katabatano, I should say. Thank you all. It's, in my opinion, the most urgent need for us as Indigenous people, something that we've never forgotten with our Indigenous teachings, which, again, does vary. We're a diverse people. Indigenous people get lumped into one category, however, we're many ethnic groups in itself right here in this continent. And this continent obviously stretches well beyond the border of the continental U.S. So First Nations of Canada, I unfortunately have to speak on behalf of, and obviously the indigenous populations of Central and South America, many of which are being prevented from traveling freely here on their own continent. But beyond all the human political agendas and things that obviously divide us as a people, it's our environment, in my opinion, that's the most urgent need. I mean, we talk a lot about racial justice and equality amongst ourselves as people, but as an Indigenous Native American, my identity is synonymous with the land that supports me and gives me the identity, the right to call myself who and what I am. And that goes for each and every one of us. So whether our country may have originated in Europe, you're calling this country your home now. And again, these are just the kinds of things that I would like to speak into, take into consideration during today's discussions and whatnot, the environment.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? You sure? You look a little, I see some. I'm a professor, so I will cold call. Okay, so I think, following up on what you said, I would broaden the category to, I think the most pressing issue is access to power and influence. So however you define that. So for me, what I see is there are a lot of people in the world who have access to many things, whether that be men who have access to work and driving and women who don't, whether that be heterosexual people who have access to marry and LGBTQ people who do not, whether that be black people who have access to some things that indigenous people may not, whether it be white people who have access to many things that other people do not. I am very interested in having an honest conversation, so I think, I think that we all too often sort of varnish over really difficult truths. And what I would like to see is an open and honest discussion about who has power and why. And it's not simply meritocracy. We like to convince ourselves that the people who have what they have it because they've worked hard. That is some bull. There are many people, indigenous people, black people, Latinx people, Asian people, are some of the hardest working people in the world, and yet they have some of the least resources. So I think until we can have those kinds of honest conversations and actually learn how to have, I don't want to say civil discourse, because sometimes it might not feel civil to people. If I raise my voice or if I get passionate, that might not feel civil to you. But guess what? What's on the line is people dying and living and having access to freedom. And so I'm passionate about that. Forgive me if I'm not always polite.
Good morning, everybody. I feel like I'm a teacher too.
Go for what you know is you. It's all you.
So first, I just want to give a shout out to the students who performed for us, mostly because students don't get invited to things and then participate, and it's a big deal. It's a very big deal when students get to sort of participate and be part of the programming. And that is sort of, for me, the key thing to sort of answer the question is teaching our youth to be critical, teaching our youth to be discriminating, being able to tell when something's not true is a real epidemic right now. And we need, to me, the biggest pressing issue is we've got to raise the next generation to be able to, flat out call lies out. Just call lies out. Be able to see them, be able to call them out, be able to correct them, but at the very least, be able to tell that that's true and that's not true. Issues like the environment, issues like human rights, civil rights, they'll continue to flounder as long as people are able to be tricked and lied to and then accept those lies. We need to be able to, have a group that can sort of correct our mistakes and also do better than we have in calling each other out. And I'm not about call-out culture, but I mean, we've done a pretty terrible job at, saying these things aren't true. We shouldn't go down the line based on these lies. And now we're pretty far down that line. So I think the biggest issue is being able to raise the next generation, which is already here, to be able to right some wrongs in the form of information. And especially because you said access, and I think about all of the access that youth have right now. I mean, they have computers in their pockets, right? And all of that's worthless if you can't tell the difference between like an Onion article and the headlines. And I know they look the same, but we've got to be able to actually discern which one of those two things is true. And more importantly, what does it mean when it's not true? And what happens as a consequence?
And I would say, why is it that certain elements are insistent on putting out false information? Because to me that connects back to power and resources and influence. Because the computers, sorry Christine, the social media, those are tools. They may lead to power or they might lead to disempowerment actually. So I think it's very important that maybe we spend less time on social media and more time in the library. Sorry, I know. I'm dead serious. Listen, I'm a person who loves Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, hit me up. However, go to the library. Read some of how many of you, I'm sorry, I have to say this. I'm preaching a little bit, but I saw, when we were singing Martin Luther King, we often sing the Negro National Anthem. How many people know those words? Don't raise your hand embarrassed. Okay, so good, that's accurate. Next year, for those of you who don't know it, learn it. Learn the history of it. Seriously, don't come here year after year saying that you appreciate Black culture and Black heritage and Dr. King when you don't know the Negro National Anthem. I just think, sorry, I just want to put it out there. I'm quiet now.
So Tina has so this is just a warm-up question. So
I'm ready to go.
And so Tina has actually given, you notice you have stickies on your tables, and so basically when we leave today, we're going to ask you to make a commitment, whether that's a commitment to yourself, your family, your community, and that could possibly be one of your commitments. But we are moving on to question number 2 now. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of context. And so this, in 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote a book, Why We Can't Wait. And so here's a portion of what was in that book. Our nation was born in genocide when it embraced the doctrine that the original American, the Indian, was an inferior race. Even before there were large numbers of Negroes on our shores, the scar of racial hatred had already disfigured colonial society. We are perhaps the only nation which tried as a matter of national policy to wipe out its indigenous population. Moreover, we elevated the tragic experience into a noble crusade. Our literature, our films, our drama, our folklore, all exalted. Our children are still taught to respect the violence which reduced a red-skinned people of an earlier culture into a few fragmented groups herded into impoverished reservations. So I let that digest a little while. So the question is, in your opinion, based on what he wrote over 5 decades ago, what's changed?
I think as an educator, I would say that even in the 20 years that I've been teaching, I think we know less about the stuff around us. I think that's what's changed. I think it was cool at one point or another to know certain things about human rights, civil rights, and that was cultural capital, and that was social capital. And I think now there's a group, that's their thing, or those are the SJWs. Yeah, SJWs. That's who takes care of that stuff. Or that's their business, or that's an X issue, right? And the compartmentalizing of the background and the context for things. I think what's changed is that we've allowed it to be compartmentalized, be turned into niche issues that, it's okay for one group to care about, and it's also okay for everyone else to not care about. I would say that's to me the biggest change, is the backwards sort of the loss of knowledge, and then the loss of having that knowledge as a good thing.
I'll be brief. So I think that what has changed is we have a veneer of progress so that it looks as though, there are more people apparently or ostensibly who are middle class, who are able to work and have a home. But I think when you peel that layer back, there are more and more people who are struggling. And so to me, what's interesting is that back in that day, I think it was known that there was racism, that indigenous people had been herded onto reservations. But now you may hear narratives like, well, everybody has a chance. And if you just were, you heard the Horatio Alger myth then, but to me it feels like it's taken on a more palpable nature in our narrative, such that when people talk about things like affirmative action, or the need for gender equity or indigenous people's rights, people, often white people, raise their hand and say, well, that means you're taking something from me. It's really it feels like as though that has become even more vociferous now, so that we're in this time where if I raise my hand and even say that I'm a black woman, people think that I'm playing identity politics. And I wish we could rewind back to a place where the kind of devaluation on women and certain labels was not in place. But people will say things like, you don't need to use it black or white or indigenous. We're all just people. That is highly problematic. I'm very proud to be a black woman. Are you proud to be a woman? Yes. Okay. Are you? Okay. So we're proud. We are proud of who we are. I think, again, I go back to my initial commentary about the need for access to resources and power. I want us to be able to have an honest conversation about who's in power and why. And I think that the kinds of narratives that are at play right now are stymieing that ability.
Thank you, Tina. I've heard you reference who has access to power, and that a couple times. For indigenous people, the people were the power. The voice of the people were represented through our clan systems. Every family was part of a greater clan. That clan had a clan mother who could collect that information, that input from that family without each family member having to air out dirty laundry, so to speak, in front of the entire community. But basically every community, every family was represented, every voice was represented. And it was the chiefs, he or she, who would follow that dictation. So it was literally the people that had the power. So as indigenous people, we unfortunately don't make up enough of a population to make that much of a difference. I make jokes about how the Million Man March made things happen, but it'd be very difficult to find 1 million Native Americans to gather even, let alone make that kind of a difference. For those of you who are familiar, some of the corporate foundations, for example, I was shocked to find out the Ronald McDonald Charity Fund will not designate any of its funds to Native Americans, simply because we just don't represent enough of the population of our own country. I need to remind you. So, talking about who has access to the power and whatnot. In regards to Martin Luther King and his words as far as where we were at that time and where we have come, I do also want to remind folks that, particularly for us coastal tribes here, slavery was not just an import, it was an export for this region. Sassafras, beaver skins, and our ancestors were the biggest exports to be sold out of this region. So that's a big reason why you don't see a large population of us, particularly in this part of the country. We were very fortunate when the Trail of Tears took place amongst many other indigenous groups that fortunately some of us were allowed to remain. Those of us who are here in Massachusetts are results of what was called praying towns. So for those of you who are familiar with the Jewish concentration camps during that Holocaust, That was basically the equivalent to what you find as indigenous communities here in New England today. So when you see that word reservations, impoverished reservations, basically what he's describing is, we kind of moved these different identities, these ethnicities, these cultures, thriving civilizations, we moved them to zoo canal pens, like where you go to, go see your monkeys when you want to go to see the monkeys, you go to that space. However, forgive me for using those kinds of comparisons, but a lot of times I feel like that when people want to access our culture, and sometimes for those reasons. It's such a curiosity item. But knowledge is power. I was reading the words of Dr. Martin Luther King over here about what we fear, what we don't understand. And I was really happy to hear what Mo and our colleagues here do in schools to support what I'm trying to do in schools. Knowledge is power. I think as we were just talking about, the wrong information has been given to the public generally, particularly around Hollywood media, and even still today. So to know that when he wrote those words, African American and Native American people still did not have the right to vote. So we weren't just also victims of slavery, we also were the last of our own country again to have the right to vote. And now, even when we vote, we don't make up enough of the population to make that much of a difference. It doesn't even matter when they come up to sharing our own struggles. So knowledge is power. I appreciate those who do allow us to come into the schools to share some of the indigenous teachings that we don't want to force it on anybody who's come here from the time that the first ship washed ashore, but something we welcome all people to inherit and accept as their own.
Thank you. I want to remind you of the index cards we have in. Michelle will start collecting them. Any index cards? Okay. All right. Question number 3 is going to be focused on unity. Out of the 200 to 300,000 people who attended the March on Washington, thousands were Latinos, many of them Puerto Ricans from New York City. Additionally, Dr. Martin Luther King reached out to the Chicano movement and began meeting with leaders such as Bert Corona, Corky Gonzalez, and Raices Tijarina to ensure that Mexican Americans were heavily involved in the grassroots formation of the Poor People's Campaign. How can we go beyond remembering Dr. King's legacy, but also strive to follow his example of unity between historically marginalized groups?
Okay, so my husband just came into the room, and I'm going to put him on the spot because he's actually written a book about this topic in terms of the way that Latin American or Hispanic workers and people of African descent, the hospital workers, were able to come together. So if he wants to, I won't put him on the spot, I won't point him out, but if he wants to answer that question, he can. But if he doesn't want to, what I can share from what I remember of the book is that there was a common plight. So the first thing is to recognize that we do have a common plight. Many times the false narratives in the media present this narrative where we are fighting against each other. And that there is a finite source. And I saw an image where there was a wealthy person in between, they were sitting in the middle, and he had a pile full of cookies. And on his left was a poor white person, and on his right was a poor black person. And the poor white person had one cookie. And the white man looked at the poor white person and said, "That guy over there wants to take your cookie." Oh my gosh. Okay? So to me, that is emblematic of the deeper issues where we often tend to fight over finite resources, who's going to present, what kind of leadership style, what should we do first, what's the priority. And I think for me, I work on something called shared sisterhood. It's about understanding and trusting each other that we do have a common plight, and then engaging in the work to understand each other, and then to actually trust each other. There are white women and Latina women and Asian women and some indigenous women who I know who will speak on my behalf, who I trust to do that. Will they say exactly what I want? Not all the time, but I trust that they have my best interests at heart. And so I honestly feel as though, so that's at an individual level. At an institutional level, I am moving beyond this notion that some of this work should be voluntary. I think that there should be some mandatory requirements, and I know that as a professor and as a member of an institution, institutions don't like to do that. People don't like to be forced to do things. But I really do think that there should be some mandates. We've seen some of this in European countries with board of directors. They were mandated to have a certain percentage of women on the board. Guess what they now do? You guys want me to keep going?
Well, always unities, that the answer's right there. There's really not much more to say. Collectively, as a group, I think we all know we can do better. As humans, again, I just want to remind folks of that. We have a lot of things that classify us and separate us, but when we get down to the nitty-gritty, as human beings, there's far more that we have in common. And it's the time of the condor and the eagle in our prophecies. So for those of you who are familiar, the indigenous teachings, they predate pen and paper. And again, I always send people, when you want to learn, where do I find out more about this? Go outside, it's right there. It's creation, it's been there for thousands of years, it doesn't really alter. For those of you who know, we follow like a lunar cycle. The Mayan calendar was considered far more accurate than this Anglo system of timekeeping that we have in place. And the point I'm raising is that a lot of people, if you recall, they were a little nervous around 2012. People were getting nervous. Y2K, I think, was an issue for some of us. But those of us who knew enough to be concerned, I guess, they knew that it was the end of that calendar, that Mayan calendar, which had been consistent for thousands of years. And basically, it was not the end of all time, or the day of recognition and Armageddon and whatnot. It was really just a change. It was a sign of a change to come. And as the indigenous people always interpreted that, it was the time of the eagle and the condor. That's what they call it. This is the time of the eagle and the condor. As people like elders like my father have mentioned, we've left the time of the seven hells and we're entering the time of the seven heavens. So it's really just a transition. And I don't know, I can honestly speak for myself. I can't speak for everyone here at this table or this room, but it's a great time to be alive. I mean, I think that we have important issues here that I see, that the significant changes that are taking place. I can at least now invite you folks to my reservation. Some of you have already visited it. You just call it Foxwoods. But it's a fortunate time for me. When I was raised here in New England. I was raised. I don't consider myself a full blood of anything. I'm sure everyone in this room, I hope, is full of blood. Some look a little pale, but I'm assuming you're full of blood. But needless to say, I was denied my identity. When I was in school and Thanksgiving came up and we started talking about Wampanoag Indians and the turkey that was handed over, that identity and that history stopped there. When I tried to speak up on behalf of myself and my people, like, no, we still exist, we're still up there on the Cape. Like, I literally was sent to detention, written up, suspended, disrupting my class, disrupting the environment that he was trying to create. Again, what were they trying to introduce, the information they were trying to give? So it's a good time we're alive. I think we can be proud of ourselves just for being here, just for being at an event like today. I honestly can't thank the coordinators for getting enough, but I just want to remind folks of that. You heard me mention it earlier. For those of you who are not familiar with this continent we call Turtle Island, we did not have borders. We did not have a Canadian border or South or Central American border. So any indigenous person from this continent, we consider our people. And when you think about it, it's just common sense. The ice was here. We couldn't live this far north. Where were we living when that ice was melting? So we descend from those people that are now being denied access to their own land. So I just want to embrace that's the teachings that many of us can embrace and learn from the time of the eagle and the condor.
Just taking a second to process what you just said. I don't know that I ever thought about, I was thinking about it as a human rights issue, that, the border crisis and all that. And I didn't really, the way that you put it, that it's like, it's people being denied re-entry. It's pretty profound. I would say that there's a lot of paternalism that dictates who gets to understand how things work. I think that unity is achieved when we sort of remove the paternalism, when we say people are capable of understanding policy. They're capable of understanding how water systems work in their town. They can handle knowing how budgets are made. And so if we can create access, not to what you were saying, to people, for people to be able to sort of sit at the table and understand how policies affect them. They'll be able to understand that, like, oh, a lot of these policies are broad enough that they affect all of us who don't have money and didn't write this policy. And so that unity comes from being able to understand the effects of what's written down and then enacted out by officials, by law enforcement, and then also by the social norms. Being able to just give people the access to read the policy, read the rules, understand where they come from, understand who created them and why, and then rewrite them. I'm in the process now with a couple of inner city communities around New England writing policy with normal people, right? And when we first approached the cities and municipalities with this idea, their first response was, nobody wants to read policy at 6 p.m. on Tuesday night. Like, nobody wants to come to a meeting and read 20 pages of like how, like the subway system that we proposed didn't work because of a budget windfall in 2012. Like, but the answer is yes, they do. You just have to ask them and then present them with the opportunity. And then they show up. And people are capable of understanding how these things work. I mean, my mom made $13,000 when I was a little kid. That's a year. And there's 3 of us, right? Now, I'm not counting her. There's 3 children, right? My mom knows anything. She knows how to budget, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that my mom can't go to a budget meeting is preposterous, right? The idea that anybody in your town couldn't actually go and participate in policy making, policy drafting, policy review is insane. They do that every single day in their lives. And yet, the access to do it in the chambers is sort of predicated on all these other factors, which actually have nothing to do with whether or not they can have a good opinion or a valid opinion on said policy. So I think the union comes from being able to understand that, like, these Latinos, these Chicanos that King identified, he understood that policies are affecting them the exact same way. That's why we got to go talk to them, because policies are discriminating against them. The punishment, the price looks different depending on your age, sex, gender, whatever. It looks different, but it's still harmful. And so being able to unite with people who are being affected by said policies, said norms, said cultural understandings is key. That's how we bring people together and create that unity. But more importantly, that's how we create change and empowerment. Because once people understand how policies actually work and how silly they are, and how like somebody in 1975 created one that now has unintended consequences for like 12-year-old girls in Botswana, like the chain reaction of how one policy here affects the entire globe. And once people get that, they're incentivized to not participate. They're like, well, I don't want to sign my name to that. I want to change that. I want to like have actual like impact that turns out differently for people halfway across the globe. And that's unique. We're an enormous, powerful country. Policy in Wellesley, Mass. does actually affect currency in Botswana right now. That's how enormous the machinations are. You know what I mean? So it's not a bubble. It's not just the North America or whatever. As my brother over here said, it's like there's continents and they're attached, which means that we're attached, right? And that our actions have consequences. Just let people understand what they're signing up for is the big deal. It's the way to do it.
Thank you. Okay, so we have some questions from the audience, and we have enough time for 1, and I'm going to do 2. And so the first one, the title was Can We Overcome? And so I'm going to ask our panelists, you have to keep your response to 1 minute. 1. Is economic justice obtainable in a racist society? 1 minute.
No. Next question.
Okay. Mo, Analog, thoughts?
What's the question?
Is economic justice attainable in a racist society?
I mean,
No?
unless money,
agree, I guess.
yeah, unless money, like,
I'm
the
like,
definition of money changes.
Okay.
yeah, no. Listen, next question.
Next question. Okay.
The answer is no.
what is, I think you touched upon this earlier, but if you can elaborate, what is the best way for non-Indigenous people to become familiar with true history of Indigenous people?
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. What is the best way for non-Indigenous people to become familiar with the true history of Indigenous people?
Why are you looking at me? Spending time with the people, if not the land itself. Again, on behalf of the Indigenous people, welcome. Welcome. And I'm not saying you're welcome, I'm simply saying welcome. Because you're here now. Like I said, I don't know what country you came from, I don't know who you put in the White House, but that doesn't bother me as much as you're here. I just ask that you appreciate the place. So again, get out, get to know the place. When people learn words like Massachusetts means Great Barren Hill Place, when they learn Connecticut is the Tidal River Place, when they see these things, it brings value to your own life, and I want you to pass that on to your children so they can pass it on. And if not, spend time with the people. By all means, most communities are open. If you get down to Mashantucket to go gaming or enjoy yourself at Foxwoods, check out their museum. They have a living history museum that actually depicts their history, and it's very different from what many of you may have seen on movies about other tribes and their history. The maple sugaring that takes place down there, they tap the maple trees and they produce sugar, maple syrup. So there's a lot more than gaming is what I'm mentioning that's going on in Mashantucket. A lot more on the Cape, for those of you who are familiar with Wampanoags who are not only pursuing gaming, but housing is a crisis. Getting these, our own infrastructure up, housing, power systems, water treatment systems, any of you who are in any of those fields, our communities can appreciate that, and they'll be happy to share those teachings with you. So, and also powwows, traditional tribal events that are going on throughout New England, all over the course of the year, all over the country, to be honest with you. It'd be great for Wellesley to consider hosting one so that you can bring those resources here, right here to your community. So I'd love to help facilitate that.
Well, thank you. So, our time's up. So I would like to thank Mo, Tina, and Anawan for spending the morning with us. And we're hoping that this can just be the beginning of a much needed conversation. So thank you very much.
Okay, sorry. Okay, feel free.
Thank you again to Christina and our honored guests today, Annuwan, Tina, and Mo. Thank you so much. There's never enough time to engage and have a conversation, but I think Dr. Opie is right, that we need to be more courageous. We need to engage in conversations that are difficult. Change does not happen if we don't have difficult conversations. And I think for a lot of us in the room, we have got very comfortable. And I urge us and my fellow white people to realize that we need to get uncomfortable and feel comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's okay. It really is okay. It will make us better human beings. It will connect us to more of the human beings that we see around us, that we look at as different than us. More of a connection to our land, as Anna once says. Those truly are the key, really, to our existence as human beings, is to understand the earth and the world, how we're connected to all of it, including the grass and the trees and the water and the air and the animals, but to each other as human beings. We are one species. We are 99.9% the same. And so I think the more that we understand that, the more that we can treat each other like the brothers and sisters that we are, because we are all one family. So I'm very, very grateful and thankful for the words for Anna, Tina, and Mo and Chris today. Just amazing. So I wanted to bring up our amazing Kuumba singers of Harvard again, if they are ready to sing for us again.
Hi everyone, my name is Cindy Zipek and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the president of the Kuumba Singers of Harvard College. I'm just going to take this time to thank World of Wellesley again and Wellesley College for having us here. I also wanted to take the time to thank our Vice President, Tony Scott, for coordinating to be here with you guys during this breakfast. Kuumba was founded in 1970, 2 years after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. And the Black students on campus and in the Boston area were really inspired by Dr. King's principles of unity and empowerment to really create this space, a safe space for us to celebrate Black creativity and spirituality at a time when racial tensions were extremely high. So we're really grateful to be here to share this with you, and we're really grateful to also be here during World of Wellesley's 30th anniversary year, since we are turning 50 this year as Harvard's oldest Black university. This celebration is something that means a lot to us, and we also invite you to come and join in our celebration when we turn 50. It's going to be on April 25th at Harvard College. So thank you guys so much again for having us. Thank you.
and go home to my Lord and be free. Sing, oh, oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. Go and go home to my Lord and be free. No more weeping. No more weeping. No weeping. No more weeping. No more weeping over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. Going home to my Lord and be free. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. I'm going home to my Lord and be free.
Goosebumps. Goosebumps. Woo! Beautiful woman, beautiful voice. Thank you so much, Kuumba singers. Powerful, powerful. I just have the vision of Harriet running to freedom and all the enslaved Africans with her. That's all I could see. Thank you. Okay, so we are super excited that we have a special Wellesley High School student, Cheyenne, who would like to present her solo dance for us. So please welcome Cheyenne.
You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we can walk it out. Ooh, mountains, we can walk it out. Mountains, and I rise like the day. I rise unafraid. I rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I rise up, I like the waves. I rise up, in spite of the age. I rise up. And I do it 1,000 times again.
Cheyenne. Thank you, and thank you to Wellesley Cheer and for Coach Sanchez for your beautiful engagement today. We are so grateful to have the students here, and we hope that they enjoyed their time with us boring adults. So thank you. All right, so we just have a few more minutes together. Thank you to everyone for staying with us and participating. So we wanted just to take a few minutes before we have some announcements before you leave, so please don't leave. We wanted to ask people to take the sticky notes that you might find on your table in a pen. If there's anything that has inspired you today, that has resonated with you today, certainly jot some of those feelings down, take that with you, hold that in your space. If there's anything that you would like to share in your community, and we ask as an exit ticket, if you would, to think about what you are committed to. You as an individual, whether you want to do something for yourself, whether it's your own knowledge and understanding and increasing that, whether you want to commit to engaging a student, whether that's your own child or someone maybe that you teach or mentor. But what is your commitment to the community? What is your commitment to you? What is your commitment to the people around you? With all of the messages and all of the information that we received today about love and unity, we are a collective community. We are Wellesley. And so what do we intend and commit to each other? So if we can just take 2 or 3 minutes, write down some things that you are committing to do, you can take those with you, or when you walk out, if you would just stick them onto the, there's a red table over here as you're walking out, and then we'll post those on Facebook to let the community know what our community is engaged in, what we're committed to do. So take a few minutes, talk amongst yourselves, get some good ideas, copy off someone else's if that inspires you. But the most important thing is that everybody commits to do something. So I want everyone writing. So thank you. Excellent. There's so much learning. Okay, so I wanted just in closing just have a few announcements. On the table, you will see that the World of Wellesley was very, very lucky to get a number with the Boston Marathon again this year. The Boston Marathon, as you know, runs through Wellesley, and they give the town numbers to raise money for nonprofit organizations. And so the World of Wellesley is honored to have a number which is attached to an amazing human being who you see his picture on the card. And we want to invite Tendai Musukabanu up to announce his running of the
So I'll be quick. Firstly, Kuumba singers, thank you for singing Costa Singaledi Africa. I'm a South African, and you made me very proud to be American too. Martin Luther King knew that truly representative US democracy is capable of incredible good. I'll give you an example that's pertinent. 30 years ago, as we know that the World of Wellesley is celebrating its 30th anniversary, apartheid was still raging. It was still segregating human beings based on the color of their skin. And the US Congress stood up, and for one of the fewest times in its history, stood up against a presidential veto and overturned that by more than 2/3 of your Congress voting for sanctions to remain and for apartheid to end. Thank you very much. See, that is history. But I'm going to talk about my story for a second, and then I'll talk about my family story, and then I'll talk about our story very briefly. My story is that some time ago, a few years ago, I was approaching 300 pounds of probably more human blubber than I could carry. And I thought running more than half a mile to save my life was impossible. I ran my first marathon in 2018. This year I'm running my 3rd consecutive marathon for Boston. Anything is possible. second piece of the story is my family's history. In 2016, we were back in South Africa celebrating some time together as a family, attending a safari, and we did not know that Wellesley had just blown up because there had been a racial attack against my family and I in our absence. We were told that we should go back home to Africa, that we should be genocided. I didn't even know that was a verb. That we should be lynched. That was said by teenagers in today's society, in an educated, supposedly civilized society like Wellesley, telling us to go back home. The victory story there is we stayed and we loved Wellesley and we all learned through that experience. The third story. The third story is how we make my story and my family's story and our collective stories united to one much more meaningful, much more beautiful story. And that's our story. We all know about the tension our country is going through right now. And so this year I've decided to dedicate my third consecutive Boston Marathon to running for all races. That means I'm running for white people, I'm running for Latinos, I'm running for black people, I'm running for indigenous people, I'm running for Asians, and I'm running for anybody who can't classify their race. I'm running for you, and I'm running to make Wellesley a more welcoming town because I know that Wellesley is capable of so much more than the hatred we experienced in 2016. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you look on your table, you'll unfortunately see my photo there. But thank you to Michelle for organizing these postcards. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, it might take you a bit of concentration and a bit of effort and time to write this and type this into your browser, to your URL. What I'm going to ask you to do is instead write on the back your mobile phone or your Gmail or whatever account, email account, and your name, and how much you'd like to pledge towards making Wellesley a more welcoming environment by supporting the World of Wellesley as it celebrates its 30th anniversary, and hopefully we'll walk the walk, or in my case, run the run on Marathon Day. Thank you.
Go to the worldofwellesley.org website. There's a button right at the top right that says donate marathon, support marathon fundraiser, and you can support 10-day like that as well.
Yes, oh, excellent. Yes, so please support Tendai, not only with funds, but also on Marathon Day. We'll definitely be looking for people to hold Go Tendai signs. So we're really proud of Tendai. And I didn't even speak you. So thank you for that. And so we're really obviously honored to have Tendai run for our 30th anniversary for the Boston Marathon. And we will utilize those funds to continue programming in our community. So again, thank you. And speaking of the 30th anniversary, we are having a community gala. So each and every one of you are invited back to this exact space. June 13th, Wellesley College has again generously donated this space for us to get together on June 13th. It's a Saturday night from 7 till 10. We're going to have some food, some music, we're going to dance, we're going to have a great time just to come together to celebrate 30 years of World of Wellesley, and we'll honor some people who have done amazing things for World of Wellesley and with World of Wellesley. So please save the date for that on June 13th. I want to have a couple of announcements before we close out. I wanted to announce and apologize first to the Wellesley Symphony Orchestra. They have been instrumental, no pun intended, with the World of Wellesley and having a concert dedicated to the World of Wellesley every year, which is amazing. Putting our program book together this year, I forgot to include them. So my mistake, and I apologize to Leslie and to the Wellesley Symphony, but I did want to mention the Wellesley Symphony Orchestra performs 6 concerts per year at Mass Bay Community College. If you haven't seen the Wellesley Symphony Orchestra, please plan to attend. The next concert is Sunday, February 9th at 3 o'clock. There is a pre-concert talk by Leslie Holmes at 2:15. Max Hobart is the conductor, and you can see or get more information at wellesley.org. And thank you again for your continued sponsorship and partnership with World of Wellesley. So thank you so much for that. I would love to bring up Ann Marlanza, who I will tell you is amazing. Right? We all know Ann Marlanza is amazing. So real quick, just before Ann Mara speaks, you know, you do this work and you engage and you give it your all and you sort of put out into the community, the World of Wellesley. We're volunteers. We do our best to bring to the community what we think that you want or sometimes that you need. And so we do a community read every year. And so 2 years ago, our read was The Color of Law, how the government segregated America by race. And it's a powerful book by Richard Rothstein, and Ann Marlanza read that book. And Ann Marlanza literally took that information, has done amazing work in creating an organization called Build a Better Wellesley. And I want Ann Mara to talk about that, but I want you to think about that sometimes the little things that you do, or you're out there trying to, you know, engage the community. And here you have a book that we put out there, someone that really resonated with the book. She bought 10 copies and gave it to all the Board of Selectmen. She gave it to all the Planning Board, which I hope you all read it. And all seriously, you need to read the book, right? You do. Okay, just saying. But again, what can happen with one person, and Ann Marlanza wants to talk a little bit about a meeting that's coming up on Thursday.
So really quick, because I know it's after 10, but yes, reading The Color of Law seriously changed my life, because everything that I thought I knew about housing segregation in this country as a liberal, progressive person was wrong. And I encourage you to read the book. I will give you a copy if you don't have one. I would go buy more from Amazon. It really is. It's a tough book to get through. It's kind of thick, but it's just really powerful. But what I do want to invite you all, actually on behalf of the League of Women Voters, which is also, we're focusing on housing this year. So Building a Better Wellesley, League of Women Voters, the Wellesley Free Library, World of Wellesley, Sustainable Wellesley, the Council on Aging, our Affordable Wellesley, the Temple Beth Elohim's Racial Justice Initiative, the Village Church, and the Unitarian Church. We all invite you to join us in a community conversation on housing in Wellesley, on affordable, attainable, and sustainable housing in our town. This is what we need to do to make our town more welcoming. We need to find and talk about an honest conversation. I love that. We need to have an honest conversation on what we need to do differently in Wellesley to make Wellesley more attainable for everyone. So we're going to be getting together on the 30th of January at the Wellesley Free Library, 7 p.m. We're having a great set of panelists. I hope you'll all attend. It will also be recorded by Wellesley Media, so if you can't make it, please look for the video. If you forget all that information, just visit the League of Women Voters of Wellesley website. It's all there. So thank you very much, and thank you, Michelle, for this wonderful program today. Thank you.
So I wanted, obviously, to thank Wellesley College, President Johnson, for allowing us into this beautiful space today. We couldn't have done it without you. I want to thank the Kuumba singers of Harvard College, Wellesley Raiders Cheer. Special thanks to Christine Horner, who did an amazing job in putting our panel together, all of our panelists, all of our community members, all the hard work that you do. We have a lot of work to do. Our community is amazing, and we have a lot of issues, as we heard about today, to make things better. We have to think about the environment. We have to think about housing. We have to think about education. There's so much that we need to do that is coming on us. And as Mo said, we need to live in the truth. We need to understand that we will not solve our problems with the environment and our annihilation off the planet. Mother Earth does not need us. We have to understand that these are big problems. And World of Wellesley is engaged in a citizens petition. You will see on your tables that we want our community to live in the truth. It starts with this symbolic gesture. It's symbolic. Indigenous people have been asking since the 70s to no longer recognize Columbus as a holiday, as a person, as a man, when we know the truth, that this man brought genocide and slavery to this land, to these grounds. Anawan speaks of his people and speaks of lack of representation. There's 50,000 Native Americans who live in Massachusetts. And I hear this when I talk about honoring Indigenous people and no longer honoring Columbus. Well, they're not here. They don't live in Wellesley. Think about that. Now first, they do live in Wellesley. And then also, if they don't, why is that? And so I am calling really to think about what this means to our collective force in all of the problems that we are faced with. We cannot be a welcoming community if we do not honor the First Nations peoples whose land we are on. We just can't. And if we can't live in that truth, then let's stop saying it. Okay? We are striving to be a welcoming community, but honoring Indigenous people, the First Nations people, the people who are protecting these lands as we speak, who are protecting the biodiversity. 80% of the biodiversity of this planet are being protected by 5% of the Indigenous people. This is something that I would say is truly small. I know as an Italian American that this holds something else, but I think we need to be ready to push that aside and have other leaders, other people that we can really truly love and honor in the truth. We need to push forward through this. I know this is tough, I know this is uncomfortable, but I would have to ask, truly, do you honestly think that we are going to be able to solve problems around the environment, around housing, around our students walking out of our high school? People saying they're not welcome in this community. If we can't honor the truth and honor Indigenous people on the second Monday of October and understand our Italian heritage and our Italian community and our brothers and sisters here, including myself, that we know we came to this land and stepped over black and brown people. We stepped over Indigenous people and black people. I know my family did. They didn't look back, they stepped over them and they got in the white line. Okay? I honestly need you to think about this and really, to Tina's point, what are we giving up?
Yes.
Okay? What are we giving up? What are we gaining? What are we telling our children to live in the truth? Indigenous people are here. They were here. They are here. They know how to steward this land. We need to listen to our black and brown brothers and sisters. We need to start that now with the symbolic gesture for this town. This is something simple that we can do, and if we can't, we need to have an honest conversation about why we can't. And then what are we going to do? How do we move forward collectively when we really are not ready to live in the truth? I am ready to live in the truth, and I hope you're ready to live there with me.
Yes.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you. I speak from my heart, from my soul. I hope you know who I am, and I want you to feel that. I honestly want you to feel that. I love you all. I love this town. I grew up in this town, and I'm going to be leaving this town. I'm stepping down from World of Wellesley at the end of July and August. My family, my husband and I have decided to leave Wellesley. My husband has had a very difficult time in this town as a black man, and I have to honor him. We stayed here. We educated our children in this community. He trusted me, and it has been difficult. But it has also been amazing because of all of you and all the work that you continue to do. So I want to thank you for giving me this voice, for teaching me this. This is Wellesley Public Schools right here. You gave me this voice. So I'm just saying. So thank you to everyone. Thank you for being here today. Please take your commitments, share it, and continue to love each other in community, and thank you. And have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.